just like I lived in New England for a long time, and I found that like once you get to this time of year, it would wear on me. Seasonal affective disorder is a real thing. You need sun, and so it's like you just start kind of depressed and like it feels like it's never going to come, and then when summer comes, you're just out, just like thrilled.
See, I'm kind of the reverse of that because I was born in England and most of all my weather experiences were kind of dreary. When it gets to
Yeah,
summer and the heat kicks in, I'm terrible. I hate summer.
you
It's
can't stand it.
no, I'm like I just need to
You want it to
hibernate and
just
stay
be
indoors.
overcast and like drizzling and with like Morrissey playing in the background.
Yeah, just something slow and depressing. That seems
Yeah,
like a good vibe.
exactly.
As we're going in. All right, well, welcome to Young at Concrete Podcast, Bob.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm going to ask you a slightly awkward question.
Yeah.
Are you an official Bob, or are you a Robert reduced to Bob?
I'm a Robert who was reduced to Bob, but I'm the son of a Bob who was a Robert who was reduced to Bob. So I feel like I've inherited my Bobness. It's an interesting name though, Bob, because a lot of people don't think twice about it, but there are certain people when you say your name's Bob, they don't believe you.
Yeah.
Like they
See,
think
my
it's like a name that's only in movies or something.
it's a
Does that
very
sound
American edition, I think. For context, my dad is called Robert, but
right?
whenever he gets called Bob, it was only by people he worked with, and my mom hated it, so would never let anyone call him Bob. And yet, every Bob I've met has been a Robert whose name has been
Yeah.
slowly over time changed to Bob, and I've never met like an official just a
I
Bob.
actually I actually grew up as Bobby.
Okay. All right.
Bobby in Boston, so I was Bobby for a long time. And I actually really like it when people call me Bobby. It's odd. Only my, couple of close friends will call me Bobby. It's a weird thing. It makes me feel like I'm in The Departed.
A simple slip. It's a perfect accent. I love
Yeah, exactly.
it. Alrighty. Well, yeah, as I say, welcome to the show. I'm going to kick off with a very simple question. And as you know, I only have maybe two questions for the entire show, even though it's an hour. We just go
And we just
where,
run with
where,
it and kind of
wherever
talk.
conversation takes us. I don't edit, so this is just where we'll figure out what we're doing as we go along. But my initial question is just, who are you?
Um, I'm a multimedia artist, that's based out of Atlanta, and I've kind of gone through a couple of different art incarnations from being, a wedding DJ to a mashup artist who made music mashups for some years, to a comic art curator to a now I have a YouTube channel which is rock docs. So it's like a poorly animated rock docs YouTube channel where I talk about bands. Like I'm working on a video about the Clash right now. That'll be a sort of full like a full length doc, kind of thing. So and that's yeah, and so I've dabbled in all different kinds of stuff, and it's been kind of a journey, and everything seems to inform each other. I feel like I've come around though. Like I was collecting records when I was in high school and obsessing on them and bands and stuff, and so to be like in my full-blown midlife crisis, to be like reacquiring all my old Bauhaus records and Smiths records and things and Cure records, and then to be like now to be making videos about those bands and learning about them. And it's cool. I've actually also gotten to talk to David J a couple of times. We've sort of become friends. He's given me a couple of interviews, and so that's pretty cool. The bassist for Bauhaus and Love and Rockets, and he's a solo artist as well. Um, so yeah, that's like in a nutshell, Graham. But there's a bunch of different little side routes that took. How did
I
you
mean, I do.
find me? Like, how did you reach out to me? Like,
Well,
what?
this I was going to say this is an interesting one because so you were recommended,
Right.
right? So I get guests to recommend people to talk to. and you were recommended by Jess Ingram, Captain Love Handles,
Oh
who
yeah,
said
incredible artist. Yes,
you should
Captain Love
talk to.
Handles.
Yeah, he was like, you should talk to Bob. Bob's great. He does the tennis ball animation stuff,
Yeah,
and
Dennis
I was
Ball.
like,
Yeah.
I was instantly like, I need to find out more about this. I need to I
Yeah.
need to figure out, because this could be. It was one of those conversations where someone tells you an idea, and you think that it seems like a great idea, but it also seems like this could just be a massive lie. Right?
Right,
This could
right.
just.
Oh, that there's a tennis ball that is the host of
Yeah,
this program.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's really there's the only reason is because he was a puppet. First he was a puppet. Like he's over here, actually. Like I'll show you the set. I should have like just brought it over, but like here I gotta move a couple. Sorry, I gotta move a couple things off here. But this is also a YouTube program, I assume. So some people will be able to
There's a
see,
visual
but
element to it.
this is
I
like
just like
a
to describe in detail.
this is like
Oh
a
wow.
this is like a cardboard box, and it's like Dennis's room, and you can see he has like a video game machine there, and records, and a record player, and a
Full
chair,
set.
and there's actually a little that black thing is like a little curtain, and I'm gonna put this down because I can't hold it and puppet him
Don't
at
hold it
the
for
same
the rest
time,
of the show.
but you know, and then he hold on, he was like this, going, but he had a
See
different
that?
voice back then. He had like an accent of some kind. He was like a blue blood, a mid-Atlantic blue blood, like George
He did
Plimpton.
have quite a posh accent. I did notice
Right,
that
and
when you
then and
realized that.
then after a while, I got to a point where I was like, I couldn't just do that forever, particularly if I was going to talk about the Cramps for an hour and a half. So it started to it. I was like, I can't do all these things at the same time. So I let his voice become my voice normally. And he was, it took a couple of different incarnations. Like he used to tell dad jokes and do like a dad joke game show, and it was like you weren't supposed to laugh and stuff. But I always wanted to be interviewing music. I wanted to like talk to musicians and artists, and so I was trying to get them to come on so I could like interview them. And then I would do this bit at the end where I'd be like, here's some dad jokes, and then I'd be like, react to these memes. And there were some great videos that came out of that. Like I got David J reacting to vampire jokes, which was great. Is on You can see that on the channel. And I got him. I did a like a song parody of that like um apple bottom jeans songs. You've seen like people
Yeah,
do song
and Bowrie.
parodies of that, and I
Yeah,
did a Bauhaus one, right? Bela Lugosi's dead, apple bottom jeans, like singing like Peter Murphy, and then I had David J on, and I got him to react to that, and it was wonderful, because actually at the time when I did it, like he has a sense of humor, but it's kind of dry. And I think of him as being this guy from this like legendary goth band. So like when I'm talking to him, and I'm playing him me singing Apple Bottom Jeans in Peter Murphy's voice along to like the instrumental of Bela Lugosi's Dead, and like watching him for a reaction, and he's just sitting there silently like listening to it, and then he just gets up and walks off screen. And then he came back and kind of laughed and stuff, but it was
right.
great. It was a very funny moment, and he was a great sport to do that. But then like I found over time, and that people really wanted to like see the rock docs. They wanted to see the stuff about the bands. They liked the interviews too, but they weren't as interested in the dad jokes. I mean, there was a small hardcore group of people who I actually love, who were there for that, and they were there every Friday. But it was like, Graham, it was exhausting to produce this show around, a segment of dad jokes and a segment of music related memes that were funny, and do it every week, and go live and and have animation, live, and voice it, and run the show. Like I was doing it by myself, with like laugh track, triggering the laugh tracks and everything. And it got to a point where I was like, I want to, I love doing this, but it's so exhausting, and I want to focus on the rock docs. And then I made one about Woodstock. Like I had some downtime around Christmas, and I started reading this stuff about Woodstock, and I saw like a thing on Reddit, and it was like a document that was like how much everyone was paid at Woodstock. Hendrix was paid 18 grand or something, and it just all of them in order. And so I was like, okay, this is interesting. So I started looking at that, and I was like, I'll translate what that is to today's dollars, and then I was like, there's a story for each of these. So I made a video, and it's a minute on each of these 32 artists and what their journey to Woodstock was like, or whatever was weird about or interesting about them going to Woodstock, and then how much they were paid at the end. And people ate that shit up. You can bleep that if you want.
No, we
And,
swear, we're
and
good.
people love that, and it blew up. It got like
Yeah, yeah.
600,000 views in like a couple of months. And so then I was like, I have to make more of these. So I did a couple of videos about CBGBs. One of them did great, one did okay. And then I kind of was like, all right, I did one about Robert Smith, being in Susie and the Banshees. And then it was like my UK audience like multiplied when I did that. And I was also like, you know what? I can do, like, I almost was hesitant, Graham, because I don't know if you ever have this as a creator, because I was like, do I know enough about Susie and the Banshees to like make a documentary about them? I mean, that's an important group, you know?
Yeah,
And so
I get that.
really it's just about like doing good research and getting good sources. Finding out what the best like 2 or 3 books about Susie and the Banshees are, and reading them and having everything be based on hard research. And then you run the chance of maybe missing something important somehow, but at least you're not going to say some thing that's just completely wrong because a bot spat it out on the internet somewhere and you picked it up on your web search.
Definitely get that. Like I mean, I've had an idea percolating in my head for ages of doing kind of art stuff and how to's and all this kind of like more informative stuff just to encourage people to actually keep creating things and demonstrating really simple stuff, which just gets gatekeeped. And I hate when people do that. So I'm like,
Yes.
I want to put that out. But then at the same time, like you say, I'm very much in my mind like, who the hell am I to tell people how to make these things? I'm just a random guy and I need to be better researched and
But
I need
I
to do
mean,
all
you
this.
could go in and be like, listen, this is how I do this. This might not
Yes.
be how it's good for you, but I just thought I would show you how I do it. I don't know. But then I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And then no matter what, somebody pops up, particularly once you start to get a couple of views. You don't even need to get a lot of views. You only need to get like a couple thousand views, and people, all of a sudden, you get a percentage of people who are like, "This is the worst documentary on the Cramps ever because you didn't mention this guy that played a gig with them." And like literally, like there was a guy who played 1 or 2 gigs with the Cramps, and I did not talk about him in the documentary. Dude, that band had a revolving door. A lot of people came and went. And if somebody wasn't on a record, was never recorded, then there's no photo that I can find of them. And it's not written in the freaking books. I'm like, sorry, I missed it. But I mean, but then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to hide this guy from the channel, and he can continue to rail into the void. And
That's the
like,
best way to do
I
it.
won't,
That's
I just will not think about him. I need to focus on my next video.
exactly. And I feel like that's great advice for creators as well. I mean, you say like it doesn't matter how big you are, you're always going to get someone come in and tell you you're doing it wrong. I have
Yeah.
a fantastic example of it, which I printed out and is on my wall up there. Is a comment from a 13-year-old telling me that I need to change the direction of my channel because it's clearly not doing well and I need to improve. And
Yes.
I so I was like, okay, we're taking this comment. So I wrote, "Do it for them," and then I just put it on my wall, and that keeps me alive every time I'm sat down, going, "Am I really going into this again? Like, am I doing this? Is this the right way to do this?" I'm like, no, I enjoy doing it this way. I've done as
Mm-hmm.
much as I can.
Right.
Get on board with it, and then you get the same thing in comments on Instagram or Reddit, where someone's saying, "Well, you
Yeah.
haven't done it this way. You've done it wrong. You've left out this information." You just mute them, let them scream
Yeah,
and stuff.
exactly. It's like I can't respond to you. But I mean, on the other, to play devil's advocate also, Graham, like I took advantage from people. I took advice from people. One was, I did an interview with Peter Jesperson he managed the Replacements, and he founded Twin Tone Records. And so he was a pretty big figure and, is a big figure in music. And people were interested in watching that. Well, I had like Dennis, like, this big. I had Dennis like this big, and I had a little window frame that was like this, and Peter Jesperson was in it. And somebody was like, "Man, you need to like get people will be like, get rid of the tennis ball. You need to. It's too distracting or whatever." And I was like, you know
Yeah.
what? Rather than like automatically being like, "Screw you guys," I'm gonna like think about that. Like these guys want to see Peter Jesperson. They don't necessarily need to see, Dennis can be the host, but they don't necessarily need to be laying eyes on him every second. And he certainly doesn't need to take up 25% of the screen the whole time. So like then I realized what I did from then on was I just put a little Dennis here and a big frame that had the guest in it. And I would sometimes just have edit out Dennis completely, and or just do a slow pan into the frame or something. And it was just like then, and once in a blue moon, focus in on Dennis asking a question or making a comment about something, but only something that is substantial and informative, and not just him talking trash or saying something stupid. Like I'm like, if it's not contributing, So in any case, I to go back to what the point of what I was saying was, I think that was at that time that was like good for me to actually listen to
Yeah.
a comment from a viewer who, even though I kind of took it a little bit like the wrong way, like they had a point. What I need to be thinking about, not what I want to do and that I think Dennis Ball is interesting and funny and I've developed this character and I want to make people pay attention to it. No, people want to hear about, Morrissey and Johnny Marr fighting and what happened, and they want to hear interesting stories they have never heard before, and they want to hear, quotes that are going to shock them and surprise them from musicians that they like, and like be like, whoa, I had no idea that they hated the guy that was in the band, and he never played on any records because he couldn't get his shit together. Like that kind of stuff, like that you didn't even know. Like I'll be doing a video and I'll be like, I literally had no freaking idea that Lux and Ivy from the Cramps absolutely despised Brian Gregory, and he could barely play guitar. I mean, I thought like, he forged something, okay, and he was part of their sound. But like by the end, he was just like a freaking a heroin addict, and he was trying to get them to play music like the Pretenders or something. Like he didn't get it. So
So
anyway, that's kind of the fun thing. I feel like it's fun. I'm like discovering this stuff and then like sort of sharing it with people.
I feel like there's a couple of interesting kind of questions there. Is so initially, obviously, as a multimedia artist, you have that challenge of you put some work out, you gain an audience for that work, like you said originally with Dennis and Dad jokes, and then you
Yeah.
want to move it on. How do you bring your audience with you? How do you keep them with you so they enjoy it? And I think I'm very much the same in the sense of I work in so many different ways. Some people are
Yeah.
here for this. Some people are here for the podcast. Some people are here for just illustration stuff I do. And
Yeah.
that's a challenge because every time you restart a project or you start a new project or you deviate from what
Right.
you originally were doing, you're taking that risk that, yeah, I'm going to alienate half my fan base and I'm starting again. And that's,
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
that's
with
why people
Dennis,
stay in the band.
it felt like it was a gradual thing. But I mean, one of the things that I did, Graham, was, I realized what was happening and I just started leaning into it. Like I started doing more interviews with people who were started making everything music oriented. Because originally I was like, I talked to the curator from the High Museum. I was talking to visual artists, actors, people who like, anybody I could find who was an artist. I wanted to get them into rappers. And then I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to really focus on music, not that rap's not music, but I was really going to focus on music. And I did that for a while. And then I did some rock doc style things. Once did those and they blew up, it was almost like I had no choice. I was like, why would I spend the same amount of time on something that's going to get 216 views when I can make something that people really care about and has the potential to get more views over time. And now it's like I've built a body of work, and I think now people know what to expect when they come to the channel. When they see it, they're like, okay, I know exactly what this is. It's poorly made animated documentaries about rock
Is that
bands.
what you put on the business card?
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
poorly made anime. My business card says potatoes and nonsense. That's all
Yeah,
it is. That's it.
exactly. And people are like, oh, I know that I need some of
Yeah.
that. I'm gonna call
Yeah,
this guy.
that's what I want.
Exactly.
That's amazing. You said something there, and I've completely just forgotten what I was. Oh, that was it. Yeah. So, like you were saying, obviously you lent into more music stuff, and obviously that's a passion for you, presumably.
Yes.
Just diving into it. Um, and I think that's another great point about when you're kind of mixing mediums and you're mixing whatever you're doing, you're still following the thing which you find fun, right?
Right. Right.
And you're fulfilling that creative part of yourself, because this I think this is something which people worry about as well, is that when you have to lean into something like you say, like where you feel obligated to just keep making that kind of content,
Right. Right.
you get a lot of people thinking, well, yeah, but I don't really want to do that. This isn't why I started. This isn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah. I mean, and
And
you
you can
don't
push
have
them.
to, I mean,
No.
honestly, like you gotta, like I'm sure that you probably find some of the stuff that you do is a lot more successful than others. And you're probably like, you know what? The painting videos don't get as many views, but I love doing that. And I have an idea for one and I want to do it. So I'm going to do it. Like I want to do a video, for example, about like signed records. Like I have some signed records, and I think that I would just be like, oh, because like those vinyl channels, they'll be like, oh, here's all my Kiss records or some crap. And but those videos don't do as well. But eventually, I'll do that just because I feel like it. Um, but yeah, it's funny. Like people will be like, "Man, like I started making these documentaries about the history of math, and now I'm like, oh my god, I don't want to do any more documentaries about the history of math." And I'm like, if you're not into that, why did you even start doing that? Like, you have to really care about it first of all for it to be any good at all, and you have to be able to bring it even if you're not getting paid, because that's what it's going to be for a long time, and you may never get paid. So you might as well make it something that you care about and you did some art because you wanted to. Like rather than trying to like chase some dream of being an independent YouTuber by making AI videos with a fake voice and or whatever, easy content or something. Um
Presumably, you're learning things for yourself as well, like whilst you're researching this stuff and
yeah,
kind of getting,
exactly. And skills,
yeah,
right? You're gaining skills and stuff like that. Like now I know how to take like an inanimate object and like stick eyeballs in a mouth on it and make it talk with my voice and move like this. I can, I have
skill
one
anyone
that's
can
like
apply.
I have one that's like a thing of French fries with arms
Mhm.
and legs and mouth and stuff, and I call him Michael McDonald's, and like from the Doobie Brothers, Michael McDonald. I really want to do something with Michael McDonald's, but I don't know what to do with him, because it's almost like at one point I started trying to do like cartoons with Dennis. Like there's a couple cartoons on the channel where it's like Dennis and his group of friends, and they're at like record store day trying to get their records, or they're doing some, there's one, they're doing different stuff. And the amount of work that took, man, I was like, if this isn't blowing up, like I have to stop because it's such a time sink.
But it's something to try, right? Like it's
But it's
something
to
to
try.
just
I had to give it a
experiment, right?
try. I
Yeah,
had to give it a try. And they're actually still related to the channel. It's
yeah.
Dennis, and it's usually like around a record store, and there's stuff going on about buying records or record store day or whatever. And whether like there's a video about like whether or not you should call records vinyls. you know and it's just like no,
The deep
they
conversations.
don't like that on the show. So it's a I don't know, that was fun and stuff, but then it was like, when I had a couple of videos do well and I saw like I could actually supplement my income a little bit, I was like, dude, I mean, I need to be able to do that. Like, so it's, but I'm still making it as fun and cool as I can, and I'm certainly not gonna make something that I'm not feeling, or that isn't like important to me.
I think this it was interesting kind of when I looked you up more when you first recommended, and then obviously you gave me a couple of things to Google. And I thought it was interesting. I think you as a creator, you definitely come across as someone who likes to try things and will just like experiment. And I think I saw
Yeah.
that with like your DJ stuff and like your remix stuff, which you did. And I was like, yeah, you that's how you end up doing this stuff. You take things and you cram them together and you go, well, this does this work? Is this an idea? Is this something I want to
Yeah,
keep
so
doing?
like viewers, like look up Woo Orleans,
Orleans, of
and there's
course.
a couple of ones. You won't be able to find the record though. Like they're not. You can't. There are not enough of them that you'll be able to ever buy one probably. And this is the one that everybody sort of cared about the most.
I'd heard of the Beastles before knowing who you were.
And this was like the third of three albums,
Yeah.
and I was basically like, I did one and it blew up. It was the Beastles. It was 2005, I think, and it was the Beastles, like just called the Beastles, I think. Actually, I mean the title was like sort of, it was weird. It was ambiguous almost, and it was 10 songs or 9 songs, and um, I was, it was pre Facebook. It was pre, I was on a message board called Get Your Bootleg On, which was a lot of Brits and people from Europe, and then a handful of people from the US. And we were all talking, Brits were calling them bootlegs. And we were all making mashups. And I started making these, and I was like, I'm going to do a whole album, and then like, while I was doing it, like, or right when I was starting to do it, I think Danger Mouse came out, and I was like, okay, yes, this is what I'm doing. That was like a major inspiration for doing it. And so, but I was like, I'll get and so I did the art and everything. It did great. It was in like Rolling Stone,
Yeah.
magazine. Like they reviewed it, and so my website blew up, and like all these people downloaded it, and it was and it was pre socials. It was on Big and
Right.
Reddit and things like that. And then um, I was like, okay, I'll do a different one. So I did a second one called Let It Beast. And I don't. It's not pressed. The first two are not on vinyl. The couple of the songs from the first one showed up on a collection of Beastie Boys remixes that a label called Hot Shot Records in Japan released, and I found randomly online one copy, and I bought it because I was like, I need to have this. It's like it's right over there. It's that black
So,
one on the end. Um and so in any case, Let It Beast came out, and it was 10 songs, and I got an artist named Josh Neufeld, who's a comic artist, to do the cover. He did like American Splendor and stuff. He's a great like, autobiographical artist, comic artist guy. And he did like a Brady Bunch, like Let It Be, but a Brady Bunch thing. So it was like me, the Beastie Boys, and the Beatles, like all in a squares. And you can, I'll send you an image if you want to insert it in the video afterwards. And so that I put it up lot, and I immediately got a cease and desist. I got cease and desists from,
wow.
I don't even know who I got them from. Honestly, it was so long ago, but it was EMI, and I think it was like the like a U.S. organization that's like EMI, and then they were basically saying, we own the rights to both the Beastie Boys and the Beatles, and you can't put this up, blah blah blah. And so I reached out to a colleague from college who was a law professor at Stanford now, and I asked her, and she gave it to her class to like as an assignment. They like wrote my letters and stuff pro bono. So they basically said like, this is fair use, and they wrote, and Paul McCartney is quoted as saying he liked it, and it's sampled on the record, and you know there's another thing where Mike D talks about he likes it when people sample the Beastie Boys and put something new in, and that's sampled on the record, and there it's really just and there's no profit. They blah blah. They made this whole, it's not and they made this whole argument, and we never got a response back, and the website stayed up. the Beastles.com, which is now defunct. Sorry, guys. It stayed up, and I was like, damn. So I waited a while, and then eventually I was like, I'll do the final record. Ill Submarine. I got Yo-Yo Yosef to do the cover. You can see it's the Yellow Submarine doing the not ill communication, doing the Beastie Boys License to Ill smashing joint thing, but it's like smashing to the bottom of the ocean. And on the back he put the Beatles, the Beastie Boys. I mean, come on, that's me. I was like, yeah, Yosef. And so he's great. He did all the Big D and the Kids Table, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones album covers, Dropkick Murphys. Yeah, so he's like so he did that for me over it was like a labor of love. In between doing paid gigs over 2 years, he did all the artwork for it while I was making the record. And I used all the rest of the Beastie Boys acapellas that there were 20. So I was like, I'm just going to do a double album. And I was like, there was a guy who was going to underwrite it, who's like a Beastie Boys collector who, is a serious collector, and he would print this just to make it happen in reality. And he was gonna pay for the pressing. And I started going through the process of getting it pressed, and was talking to there were some presses in Eastern European countries that sometimes will do stuff that's outside the copyright laws of the United States for different reasons. They feel like they can do that. And so I was going to try and do that, and then he was like, no, he got cold feet. He was like, no, I don't want to do that. And I was like, okay. So Yosef had mocked up all the stuff and everything was ready to go. I shouldn't even be telling the story. And then this other guy reached out to me from a label that I won't mention, like a label that you might have heard of, but they do other shit after the lights are off. They fuck around, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, dude, I want to press this record.
Yeah.
And I was like, I happen to have all the art as PDFs, like literally the cover with wraparounds and the centers of the records, everything, And I had also gotten, Rick Altergott, who is a comic artist, to do like a middle thing, which is like, George Harrison and MCA. And so like this was gonna be the inside like gatefold image. So it was like, the gurus of the Beastie Boys and the Beatles, but it was like we didn't have the budget to do that, I don't think, or he didn't want to do that. So in any case, I made no money from it. But I was like, here. And then like some number of months later, a box of like 30 copies of the Beastles record came to me. And I was like, yes. And I held on to them. I gave them to a couple people. And then when I DJ'd at MCA Day, I was like, I gave one to Prince Paul. I gave one to Chuck D. I gave one to DJ Hurricane. I gave one to Mario C., the Beastie Boys producer. I passed them out, and I passed out copies of New Orleans. And I basically got rid of all the records I had left because I was like, the best thing I can possibly do with these is give them to the Beastie family people, and it was also I gave some of them to, folks like me who are like artists who are super fans who also did something which, has been sort of embraced by the community. So I gave them to like Andy Cat. I gave one to Andy Katz, who's a visual artist who's worked with Chuck. And like, people who had been working with Chuck D, some of those artists, I gave them copies. So it was cool, man. That was like the pinnacle of my DJ career, was doing, MCA Day and getting to perform with Chuck D and, Prince Paul and stuff like that. It was sort of like mind blowing,
Yeah, it's a real collaboration kind of spirit situation where you're just in the right place, right time, knowing the right people, and
Yeah, and it just
going.
kind of happened like that record.
Yeah,
It just happened. Like now, it's sort of like if somebody made that, it wouldn't get paid. It wouldn't be paid attention to, and it's algorithmic too. It was like it organically grew algorithmically, and now that would be suppressed by advertisers who control the flow of information on the internet.
I was literally just thinking that when you're saying you kind of got contacted with cease and desist, like if you do something like that and you experiment now, as soon as you slap that onto YouTube, you're getting the video striked and taken down, and
Yeah, it's like
it's
an
going to be removed.
automated, there
Yeah,
it's like an automated filter now, which is one of the
yeah,
reasons that I'm doing dentists because I'm like,
yeah,
there was no future for me to make, and it's like in the end you realize like when you're young you're like I just want to make money. I don't want to make money. I just want to make art. I want to connect with people. If people care about my art, it doesn't matter. I don't need to be rich. And then you realize, yeah, but I do need to pay rent. Like I don't need to be rich, but I need to eat
yeah, yeah,
food every single day. So like, then you're like, all right, I have to make some kind of I need to at least do something that I can use in a monetizable way. Like I can put on YouTube or something, you know?
yeah.
And so I started doing that. And I mean, I kind of feel almost for my friends and colleagues who are continuing to work in the world of mashups and remixes because it's a hard world to carve out a niche where you can even make a pittance, as a side gig. Like I guess Twitch, people can be on Twitch and they
Yeah.
can play music and kind of get a following and get like chats and things like that and make some cash. But it's not like, and you can do gigs live, but COVID killed so much of that too.
It's interesting thought of, especially as I mean, I'm a big fan of gig communities. I'm a big fan of small shows and everything independent, which can be independent, should be, from my view.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that the real space for experimentation is still live venues, even if it's online live venues, like you're saying with like
Right.
Twitch and live streaming.
Right.
Is if you want to do something which even looks an existing IP, the best way to get out there is to do it live in one shot in front of an audience, and then the audience goes and tells everybody else about it. Like it
Yeah.
won't exist
Yeah.
online because it'll get taken down. You can't have it as a permanent entity. So it suddenly becomes right. Well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it live. It's going to kick out, and then someone's going to go tell someone else. During
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, I did streams every day
Yeah.
for something like 300 days, and they were simple streams. It was just 20 minutes of me doing whatever. I was painting, drawing, reading a book. It was more like a human connection thing, experiment than anything else.
Right.
And the investment I got from that of just people being interested was way higher than anything ever. And I was like, this is interesting. This is like a
Because it was
weird,
because it was outside the box,
yeah.
probably, and people were also looking for ways to connect with other people, and it showed like you were doing that too. And they're like, yeah, it was interesting, and Dennis he grew that way too, and it was a void. It definitely was so connected to COVID and being isolated at home and having to find ways to connect with other people. Um, and it's nuts, man, because when I was DJing the mashup thing, it's like it was like a whole different sort of thing. And then it just like I would be at this event and there'd be all these people and they'd be so excited and like, people were making money at doing this and all this stuff. And then it was like boom, done. And it's going back, but kind of cool that the online version of it happened too. Um, and it had its ups and downs. There were some like misfires there, you know.
I mean, as someone who's
The
obviously been at it
celebrities
for a
singing
while,
Imagine. Remember that?
as much as the pandemic goes, that was the low point of the pandemic, and it was only a few
Right.
weeks in.
Yeah, that and everybody dying are like
Yeah,
tied.
yeah. Everyone said that like we don't need this. We don't need this, but we don't need this. Everyone's on one
Seriously,
side
we
of this.
don't. And it was so funny. It's just funny in retrospect, how smug that was and how
I
how
love
out of
that that's still a talking point. I love that it just keeps going. But I was gonna say, like, as someone you've obviously gone through different iterations of yourself and different, what's the word, kind of culture of live versus online versus what you can post and what you can't post. And it's when I look at the landscape now, I almost feel like we're heading back to more live stuff, more in-person stuff, just
Yes.
because the internet has been co-opted in a way. And I
Yeah.
find that incredibly interesting, but I wondered what your point of view is from someone who's done it for a while. Do you think that's even possible to
For the
get back?
internet to be co-opted, like
Yeah,
well,
to
not
to be
completely
co-opted into
controlled, but I mean, I know
yeah.
I agree with you, and I
Mm,
think it's hard to say really. but Graham, because it's like whatever your personal experiences are, right? So it's like if but I can say for myself that like I'm excited to go to shows. I'm going out to live events because I want to be around other people. And I want to be at a group. I want to be in a group of people experiencing something together. And I think a lot of people share that same thing, and that is it's important. And it's still, commercialized and so forth, but like these bands really care and they're going out and doing their stuff. And when it comes down to it and they're standing on stage and you're standing in front of them, like it doesn't matter that like Ticketmaster was where you bought the ticket from. It's done. You're in that room with David J and the other members of Love and Rockets, and you're like, man, this is music that has meant a lot to me for over a long time, and they're still bringing it. Or they're a new band, and or whatever. But like, it live shows that you can't replicate standing in the same room. And also it's kind of like there's like like there's something to be said, like it's happening in reality. It's not going through that somebody is controlling
Mhm.
to make money, right? Like even if it's a digital pipeline where they're going to tack ads on and they're going to monitor what you're watching and how long you watch for and whether your eyeball looks away during the broadcast or whatever. And so I don't know. It just I mean, I'm stating the absolutely bloody obvious. It's freaking reality as opposed to the internet. It's two different.
It's a weird thing if I find when I speak to artists, of we always feel like we're stating the obvious, right?
Right,
We always think this is the most obvious, like making things feels great. People should know that. People should like that.
right,
That should be a default factor within your life that making things feels great. And then when we meet people who
right.
don't make things and they make something like, oh, I've never realized the benefits of just creating. And I'm like,
Oh, that was
wow,
amazing. Wow, that was really fun.
yeah.
And
And
you're
when you
like,
talk
yeah.
Yeah. And you talk about live
Like,
events and you think, yeah, no, it's great because you're in an environment, a space and experiencing things. And I go to live events to do what you just said. It's just I go not necessarily for the human interaction, but I go to see something which I can't find online anymore. And it's I want to see new things and I want to see things from the people who are creating things and passionate about the things which they're creating.
yep.
And that just doesn't exist online anymore. And again, it seems like this should be stupidly obvious to the world that we're in this situation,
It's like you're
but other people don't.
accumulating it. It's like a life experience too. I mean, particularly if you care about the band you're seeing,
Uh,
like you could be like, man, like I need to see Neil Young play or whoever. And when they come around and you're like, man, and you go to the see, like I saw the Doobie Brothers like last year and they were phenomenal with Michael McDonald. And I was like, man, I am so glad I came to this show because I'm watching legends of my time perform their music flawlessly still. And they're killing it and they're having a great time with all of us in this space right now, in this moment. And we're all singing, listen to the music or, taking it to the streets or whatever. And I mean, it was just you know what I'm talking about. It's a transcendent experience. And when you're sharing it with a group of other people, then it becomes like this basically it's like one of those things that makes community, that like makes a society work, that we have these shared experiences and values and like it matters that Stevie Nicks sang these songs, and it matters to women and it matters to men and it matters to people who hear them and they're in the throes of a relationship and it inspires them to feel like strong in what they are going to do, or that they remember a time their heart was broken or something. And it's I don't know, it's important, it seems like to me.
yeah, I think it's a very good point to make. It is just that connection you're getting from the work and what other people are putting out there. I always think it's
Yeah,
like you mentioned kind of concerts, but I think it expands outside of like that. When I moved, there's a painting which I wanted to see most of my life by Francis Bacon, and I was like, I need to go see this painting. It's like my favorite painting in the world. I need
What's
to go
the
see it.
painting? What's the
It's
painting, and will you put it on screen for the viewers so they
I
can
will put
see?
it on screen for viewers. I first saw it in the 1989 Batman film, and it's the Pope with two pieces of meat on the either side of it. When the Joker goes into the art museum, there's a Francis Bacon painting, which is the Pope with meat. And I saw that as a kid, and I was like, "That's incredible! That's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I need to know more." And then, as an artist, I found more about it and got into that kind of style. But
Yeah,
I saw it in a gallery, and I was stood there in this gallery, and no one else looked at it. And I was thinking, "Oh yeah, it's because I'm in a gallery, which is just a generic gallery, surrounded by people who came for one reason or another. They didn't come for this painting. Whereas
right,
if this was a Francis Bacon show, it would be
right.
filled with people who were interested in his work. And
Mm-hmm.
I would be stood there with five other people, which is like, this is incredible. This is what I wanted to see most of my
And
life.
also, depending on how it's curated, like, if they
Yeah.
put it at the end of the room with a big spotlight on it, everyone's gonna walk to that and be like, "This is the point of everything."
And
It's pretty
there was placed
cool.
near it, like lily pads and stuff, so people went to look at that. And I was like, I get it. I
Yeah,
understand why
yeah.
you're not looking at this versus that. But
It's also, I mean, to be fair, also like when you go into a museum like that, it's like it's so much. If you go into you're in New York area, like if you go to the Met or like MoMA, it's like you can't swing a dead cat without hitting 17 masterworks, and you don't have time to give them all the proper attention. Like I went to the Louvre and I was like, basically my jaw was dragging on the floor by how immense and gorgeous the works there were. And everything, if guys, if you go to the Louvre, when you go to the Mona Lisa room, don't look at the Mona Lisa, it sucks. Look at all the other things around it because they are amazing, but it's sort of like you don't even have time in your life to accept the sublimeness of all this art. You gotta just have to pick your Francis Bacon of the day, you know?
it's interesting you just said that because I just had the thought of like that's actually a weird thought about museums. Museums are kind of like best of albums of every
Right.
artist. Like this is the best thing they ever did. We're gonna put
Right.
20 of them in a room, 300 rooms, and then but if you asked someone to do that with CDs and like, oh, here's a best of CD, every song is gonna make you feel amazing. Here's 500 CDs. You'd be like, that's too much. Like I can't do
Yeah,
that.
right.
But
Yeah.
we paid $50 and walked through a museum. Like, no, this is what I wanted to experience. I want to be sensorily overwhelmed.
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky in that my day job for a while was working at the Woodruff Art Center in Atlanta. So, that's the High Museum of Art, which is basically the Southeast's kind of premier art museum, the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra and the Alliance Theater. So I was able to like really be close to all this art and stuff for a long time. And dude, I would go over there at lunchtime every day, and I would be like, okay, I'm gonna go look at those glass. I'd be like, it's a sunny day today. I'm gonna go look at the glass because they have these pieces of glass, and it's where the sun comes through. Or I'm gonna look at whatever, and I just pick one thing, and it was actually nice, and it's not a huge museum, but the quality is top notch. So it's like every single piece is phenomenal. So in any
Multimedia
case,
to it.
I was lucky in that I was able to like to do that. So and people who work at museums are lucky that way.
They are. They see it every day. They look so bored, but they're stood there
But yeah,
surrounded by it. So
they have feelings about it. If you talk to the guard, like next time, guys, viewers, next time you go to a museum, ask the guard what their favorite painting is. You might be surprised what they
maybe
tell
they're all
you.
just burnt out. They're
Yeah,
seeing too
they're
much
like,
beauty.
oh
We're
my
not meant to have that
gosh.
beauty. It's like sugar. We're not meant to have that
Yeah,
much. Like,
exactly. I just want to. On my break, I go outside and I look at like a brick wall. you
I
know.
just turn on TV and I watch the most mundane thing because I've been surrounded
Right.
by too much majesty.
Yeah, I watched The
Yeah.
Bachelorette exclusively.
So I have one question to kind of round this out with, and bring this. Well, two questions to round this out with, and bring this to a bit of a close because it's been a
Sure.
lovely hour chatting to you. Um, when you think of kind of what you do, what you create, the history of what you do, and I think I already kind of know this answer because you already answered it at the very beginning, is is this what you imagined what you'd be doing when you were a kid?
Like, absolutely not. Like, it's so funny. Like, when I was a kid, I remember watching, like, you know, Bill Cosby, Richard Pryor, George Carlin videos, and being like, I want to be and Eddie Murphy, and being like, I want to be a stand-up comedian like those guys, and like make records that are so freaking funny that people listen to them over and over and over again, which was a thing, youngers, which you might not remember, but there was a point in like where, and probably earlier too, because there were where like comedians would release a lot like records on vinyl, and it would be a thing. You would get it and you'd listen to it, and you'd be like, dude, you have to come over and listen to this record. And you wouldn't necessarily have video of the performance, and so that's what I envision doing. But like honestly, it's like you don't necessarily choose your path. I mean, you can sort of move towards what interests you and try to, but it's like, the crazy thing, Graham, is that the world changed around me while I was growing up and becoming an artist, and then doing different kinds of arts. Like literally, like I could do mashups now and nobody would care because there's literally a ton more people doing it. Like when I was doing it, it was sort of new, and so then people paid attention to it. Now I'm like, okay, that's cool. I did that. I don't need to do that forever. Um, and I've always loved comics and animation, so I might as well move on and try and do something different, and try and incorporate other skills. So no, there's no. I had no freaking idea what I still don't know what's going to end up happening. you know?
That's the way to approach it. I mean, it's yeah. I think it's a good advice that you just gave. Is just that, it doesn't matter what you really aimed for as a kid or what you thought you were going to have as a kid, because everything seems simple when you're a kid, and then the world keeps changing around you, and you adapt to that. But you keep the sensibilities of what you want to do. You want it to be
Right.
funny, so you get to be funny. You want to, you love music, so you get involved with more music, and that drives that. It just doesn't matter what
Mm-hmm.
format it takes. I think that's great advice.
Absolutely. And it's interesting too that, seeing something that a set designer on a Batman movie put on as a detail in a set, like sort of influenced your, like, becoming an artist. Ultimately, it seems like, and that's just such a strange little quirk that you even happened to see that movie, like that got made and they put that in there, you know?
I mean, that was made the year I was born, and I didn't see it for a few years later, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, and then you were like, all right, now I'm gonna, and then once you get into that, then you're like, this a rabbit hole of surreal art and stuff,
Yeah, you
and
combine
it's
that
just
with
like you're
everything
like,
else.
man, this is so cool, you know?
We're a collection of our experiences, and I think that's very true. Talking to you and me, it's just that's what being multimedia artist is all about. So my final question is, if you'll allow me, is who should I speak to next? You were recommended.
Um, you know who you should speak to is Dave McWayne from Big D and the Kids Table. He's a punk poet. He's been a lead singer of that band for like 20 years. And so there's punk ska guy, but he's also an author. And so he's written a bunch of books like about his journeys on the road, and he writes poetry, and he's DIY. Like he's still like everything is do it yourself. And he's also a college professor who has taught other musicians how to do stuff. So I would recommend checking out David McWayne from Big D and the Kids Table.
I'll definitely try to reach out to him. I mean, when you were dropping off bands earlier, and you were like, "Yeah, big deal," and kids move table and drop you off monkeys, you were basically just describing my teenage years.
Oh,
So
cool. Yeah.
that's
So
like
this one.
that's a big thing in my head where I was just like, "Well, I know all of these bands."
So like I did some scratching on this record.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It got it, and then not. It's really not much. And then like this one I did with Big D and the Kids Table and Mo and Mo Pope, the rapper. And so I used music from Fluent and Stroll and raps from Mo, and it's actually freaking good. Like it sounds natural. You can actually still buy this record on Asbestos Records website. And then like the other Big D record is I did another remix where you can't see it, but it's way over there. It's the last one there. These are all my records along this line. So anyway, Graham, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you for coming on. I can realize giving up an hour of your time is always a challenge, and hopefully it wasn't too painful.
No, it wasn't. I should have turned the AC on though. It's getting like hot in here now.
Yeah, it's still raining here. It's still going, but it's been lovely to talk to you, Bob. I think everyone should check out your channel. I'll link in everything below and whatnot. And yeah,
Fantastic.
it's all good. We will talk to these guys later.
All right, thank you.